exhausted our time. Unfortunately, it seems like you guys are willing to work more, but I think
some of the parents are busy delivering meals.
Yeah.
People are asking for it.
Yeah. So before I start, everything you say is on record. Okay, that's our alibi for our wives to show them that why you haven't been.
You were not in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I need to explain to my wife where I've been for the last 2 days. And
during weekend.
Yeah. So I showed her the video of the morning yesterday, and she was really impressed. She said, I actually wanted to join. And so this is going to be the concluding video, and I'm going to share it with all of you. I'll try and upload it to YouTube. I don't know if YouTube can accept 1.5 hour videos, but I'll upload it and I'll share the link with you. Then you can, have a sort of a memory of what we did here. So what I want to do right now is, first of all, start with what we got. Okay, Sanjay is going to pitch the deck, okay, to you as investors, as sort of investors here. So you'll get a now to revisit the product from how we articulate it. Okay, so this is kind of a great summary and a great way to show how it works. I don't want to open it to discussions, the deck itself, or maybe we can have a 5 or 10 minute Q&A session just to exercise that part of the process as well, because it's a very important part of an actual pitch. It's not just what you deliver, but how you answer questions. So we'll do that as well. And after that, we'll start, we'll start with, or we'll finish, that will be the actual conclusion of your contribution to the workshop, and we'll start reviewing and debriefing the process that we went through. And I want to say that we'll be here, we'll be done by 5. Okay, I really want to say that, but
it's recorded, so.
But I'm not gonna say
it's
it.
recorded. So
it's recorded, yeah. So I hope we'll be done by 5. I'm not sure we'll make it, okay, because I think we'll reach a point where, well, the time is going to run out, but we'll still have a lot of stuff here. So if you feel that you need to go, please just feel free. And the last thing I'm going to say is, I'm going to send you in the next few minutes an email with a link to a Google form that is that I want to get feedback from you. Okay, so 10 questions. Most of them are open questions. So please, just answer them. Really, what you think, and I would appreciate the feedback, because this is the first time I'm running this workshop, and I got the feedback from you that it was really helpful, and I'm happy to hear that. But I'm sure it wasn't perfect. So I want to get the feedback on what really, how you really think I can improve on that workshop, because I'm considering doing it again. Probably SLP will consider doing that type of a workshop, so I'll be happy to hand it over with some improvements that you guys went through. Okay? So Sanjay, right?
Okay. Normally VCs won't clap. Yeah, okay. Slides came in literally last week, so we are going to maybe.
We are VCs with no money.
Seeing the slides for the first time. So let's go into role play mode, and then we'll see how that thing goes. So my name is Sanjay Paul. I'm representing the Next Meal team. We are here to revolutionize the children's food delivery market. I want to go through this the next 20 minutes or so, talk to you about how we are going to do it. Our ask of you is $1 million in seed funding so that we can execute over the next 18 months our very detailed plan that we have come up with. So our tagline is Kids Eat Right. Our belief is that there are working parents in this country who are having a very frustrating time keeping their kids fed nourishing meals on a daily basis, especially on those work days. Not only is it time consuming, it's also very stressful to manage your time between the different juggling acts that you have to go through as a parent. And finally, the food that you might have prepared might also go to waste. So keeping up with the nourishing needs of your child is the fundamental problem that we are trying to tackle. What we want to do is to deliver fresh meals to these parents within their own community, quickly, in a very stress-free manner, and also in the process minimize the waste that comes about from actually preparing excess food. What you see here is two different households, one within the neighborhood, which is preparing the food, and the other within the neighborhood, which is going to consume the food. This is where Next Meal comes in. It provides the marketplace for parents to share and exchange the meals that are being prepared for toddlers and provide these nourishing meals while at the same time save time for themselves. The way our product operates is the parent would come in, let's say I'm the parent, I'm looking for a meal for my child, I'm looking for a dish, I would browse the various listings for the specific app, or confirm the freshness because these individual listings would have a date and a time associated with them. I would look at the ratings for a specific seller. Once I know what the specific one I'm looking for, the specific dish, and the seller that I want to exchange this or to purchase this meal from, I choose the dish, I read the description, choose the dish, confirm of course the needs that I might have, and then the dish is delivered to my location. Obviously my child enjoys the dish, and I in turn do a favor back to the system and I rate the seller. This is how our app would work. Why this market is very interesting for all of us is that, first of all, there are 46 million kids in the US alone who are in the age of 0 to 11 years old. Of this 46 million, let's take a number, 50% is the number that's of working parents. So for those working parents, 23 million kids, and even if you assume a meal per day is what our company, this marketplace, provides for these parents, of which we would get a commission of $1 per meal. That is the potential total available market that we are going after. As you can see, it is pretty incredibly huge. Now, in terms of the go-to-market strategy, while that is the total big market, what we are also choosing for is a specific go-to-market strategy that is very niche, very narrowly focused. So here I'd like to share with you sort of our approach. Because we're in the San Jose area, our Next Meal team is established here, we're going for a beta within 3 to 6 months. So we have an MVP ready, and we'll be sharing that with you at the conclusion of this presentation. But within 3 to 6 months of the beta, we are focusing on 10 specific daycare centers in the San Jose area. And as you can see, we move forward with expanding the focus on additional daycare centers in the San Jose area and then in the Bay Area. So one dimension of our growth is outreach, which is we go from a very focused San Jose location to a broader Bay Area location. And in the Bay Area, then of course, daycares, after-school clinics, hospitals, etc., doctor clinics. The second category of growth, or focus and then growth in that category, is the food itself. Our initial strategy is to focus on for parents who are in dire need to get food for their children who may actually have certain allergies. So this community of parents who are sharing this kinship of children with potential allergies can now share their experiences and their food on this marketplace, and that's our entry point, focusing on children who actually have allergies and the parents who want to feed these children nutritious home-cooked meals from other parents who are also facing a similar experience. As you can see, it doesn't necessarily limit us to that market. We actually expand from that market to additional food categories. So and when we say additional foods, the allergy foods are also included in there, but it obviously expands our total market. The age. Initially, we focus on under 3 years in the San Jose area, again, staying a very narrow focused approach. As we go forward, we expand that to under 11. And finally, in terms of the strategy of how we go about taking this to market, in the initial stages, because of the limitations of our team and the limitations of the size of our team, we're focusing more door-to-door, friends and family, relationship building, creating a more community-focused approach. But as we go forward, using the social media to create viral marketing, referral programs, Facebook programs, groups, etc., that's how we would expand our overall marketing strategy. So this, I hope, gives you the opportunity to see how we can reach this target customer base, starting with 50 customers in a 3-month period to 6,000 customers in a quarterly period at the end of our 18 months. Now, how do we make money is, as I said earlier, we have a commission rate of $1 per meal, and between the buyer and the seller, the money is exchanged on the marketplace. Next Meal derives its revenue as a 20% transaction fee of that specific meal. And from a competitive landscape, the children's food delivery market is already has certain players, but interestingly, when we did our research, we found that there is not a player who provides this type of trusted source, a very reliable, home-cooked, nourishing meal for our children that comes again from a trusted source, but and of course also saves time. When I say saves time, this means this is a very convenient way to order the food and have it delivered to our home. The corresponding other competitors that we saw, Lala Lunch is an example of a competitor who is focused on children, only exclusively on children, but they are more of a mass producer of food for children. This is where Next Meal is very differentiated from the Lala Lunch category. The other ones you may or may not be aware is Munchery, Sprig, etc., which is more of a broader category of food delivery services. Obviously, they can also target children, but because of their broadness, we believe that we are actually very differentiated. We are focusing on children in that specific age category. Moving forward, what this does to our business, a couple of things I'll tell you in terms of the assumptions here. So 50% annual retention rate is what we have assumed from a sort of a customer base. That translates to a lifetime value for our customers of $800. A key metric we will be monitoring during our progression is this customer acquisition cost. So our marketing team is going to be very focused on making sure this customer acquisition cost is less than $20 because that is the threshold where we are profitable. We are targeting 20 transactions per customer per quarter, and the cost per meal is $5 for the buyer. And as I said, at a 20% subscription transaction fee, this makes it $1 per meal for Next Meal. Now, what this translates to from a monthly customers and a net revenue perspective is we are looking at approximately 2,200 customers per month that we are servicing at Q6, and a revenue of a gross revenue for the company, which is the transacted revenue on the platform, of $1.25 million at the end of Q6. The funding request for all of you is that we are looking for $1 million in seed funding, and this will be spent over the next 18 months. The 3 categories of funding that we are going to spend this money on, and we have very detailed projections behind each of these individual categories, starting with marketing, which is $380,000. This is 38% of the total spend goes to marketing, and largely it's going to be on the latter half of the 18 months where we'll be looking for acquiring customers. Development, which is going to focus right from the very beginning, and that's why the number is 50%, is because we're already incurring this expense to build a platform where we will be having a versatile and a very solid platform on which we can expand additional use cases beyond the ones that we've been talking about. So that's development, and of course there's a management fee which covers largely the 2 founders that comprise of Next Meal. So with that, I want to thank you, and I want to get your attention now to the next team, which is going to actually show you the MVP that we have developed for demonstration purposes as to how this would actually work in a specific buyer and a seller situation. Thank you for your time.
Great.
All right, let's go next.
You got it.
You got it. You
No,
did
you
it.
don't.
It is money.
I have nothing. I was just speaking. You guys did all the work. Come on. You guys should tap yourselves on the back. But yeah.
Give ourselves $1 million.
Let's do the let's finish with the app and the landing page, and then we'll have the Q&A. Okay, because that will kind of probably answer some of the questions and give you the bigger picture. But Sanjay, amazing, really great presentation.
Yeah. The work is done by all of you guys. You don't go there.
Doesn't really work very well.
I did something with my browser. How can I get it to make the browser smaller?
playing.
Okay, I can ask him to do it.
You can upload it on YouTube.
You're going to charge.
Exactly. For you to present it, you mean?
Yeah.
Just once you go there, just maximize it. Anyways, it's pretty neat.
Right, doesn't fit the browser, so I wanted to finish before the.
You don't want it to be actually. You need to publish it.
I didn't publish it. It's fine.
Well, can you get rid of it?
Because in browsers it says you can finish. I don't want to finish. Yeah, you see.
Why not make it small?
Well, because it looks, I can't do that because I'm used to Windows 10. Because it doesn't, because that screwed up and it should just, we should look at that page first without that, and then I can scroll.
We're not able to remove it.
I still can. Maybe we could add another band. That's probably what we could do. But then it won't let it, it's kind of screwed. The band.
It's part of the background. This image, right?
After a while, like going back to India is something, me coming here is another thing.
We'll try.
Because then you go into the, you click that.
Confusing it.
That's what I
You want
think.
to-
But it's there.
We don't have adjusted by now.
So you don't need to worry about it. Let's just take it out.
Alright, so, like, can I,
Do you want someone from the dev team to help you actually?
no, it's fine, okay. So, this is our MVP. Next meal, kids eat right. Okay, so this is the listing screen where we have a list of things that have been listed by all our sellers. We can choose any listing and we'll be able to figure out who it was done by, what are all the allergies that, the main value prop for our product is that the allergies, it's for parents with kids with allergies. And so we specifically ask for the sellers to specify what is it that this particular product contains, and we ensure that these are the, we also say, these are the products that, sorry, these are the allergies that it is free of, right? So peanut and lactose for this mashed potatoes. You can purchase it from here. It will provide you with confirmation, and you'll be able to purchase it directly. Right now in our MVP we do not have that, but we will eventually be able to add that. And once you confirm, you'll be able to, once you have the food, you'll be able to, also review the seller and provide feedback on the food, the presentation, the quality of the food, and the delivery time. You'll also be able to know more information about the seller itself. So, what her rating has been, and any information that they've provided in terms of how many children they have, what are the restrictions that they have, and what are the restrictions with which they actually cook the food for, and all of that. We also have the ability to add a listing. So, for example, you'd be able to give information about the name of the dish. you'll be able to take a picture. Here you'll be directly taking a picture to your camera, and
That's a great password.
I remember this.
and you can specify, okay, so these are all the, you certify that, these are the products it excludes, and describe your dish here, as well as, the price and how much of it is available, what is the portion size that it's available, right? And you can submit here, and it'll go back to the listings page, right? There's also information about your profile. Like this is for me as a user, as logged in as a buyer, and this is the diet restrictions that I have for my kids. And whenever you do something like that, we'll be able to also filter out any dishes that we have based on your diet restrictions. And I believe that's about it. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Donna?
Hey, where'd you get those cookies? I want some of that food.
By the way, one thing I will say is, I'm just going to come out of role play, but I had not seen any of this. So amazing work. Right.
So
Yeah,
they would be
Proto
made
was
up for
actually
the.
a great tool, and we were able to split our work into different screens and all of that. And, we started it this morning, so.
Brings it up.
That's
so much stuff getting worked.
Yeah.
And also they could finish because I was not part of the team.
All right, so our landing page is really actually this part, when you get to it either from mobile or from a smaller tablet, it's really just the next meal that's going to show up. So it's the next meal with the tagline, kiddos eat right, kiddos eat right, home cooked kids meals delivered. And then it's very simple, it's a very simple page. And we go for the food for toddlers, where we add different foods for the toddlers, and then also they cooked fresh by parents you know. So cooked fresh by parents you know, or your child's next meal from moms and dads you know. What does it say? You know and trust, and get home cooked meals delivered. So sign me up. So we have a lot of, which is really key, a lot of places for signing people in, like, okay, click here, right? So here we have the toddler-focused, trusted community and delivered. And then this is the really important part too. It's like, okay, what if you're a mom or dad, or somebody who wants to really share that food? So, this is like food to share, here you go, click here. So it's brings it into a separate database. So that's what we have for our homepage, which has a little edits, or little things that need to be fixed on it. So, and that's it.
Great.
The homepage, thank you.
Okay, so Q&A session for the product, and Sanjay basically.
Just for all of us. So my question was. Don, come on over. It's all of us.
All of us.
We are the
You have to be taking the
this
shots
is,
now.
this is the VC, so we are the three presenting to the VC.
Three co-founders. Three co-founders.
One feedback, when you talked about
I'm
in
just
your
the-
pitch, you talked about the value
Creative
problem,
designer.
so on. You talked about the 1 to 3, what the product does, but I did not see any visual of the product itself. What is the product? You described an app, but it wasn't clear what the product itself was. So in the flow, that was missing.
Good point. So our hope, strategy was to actually defer that part of the discussion for the actual product demonstration. But we'll make sure that when we actually have only the deck presentation, we'll have a visual of the product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Question?
Sanjay, good presentation, good job. You had a knack for that. I have not seen the bios of your founders and the founding team. That will help me to understand where you're coming from. That's one thing. Second thing is, what are the risks? Where do you think you can go wrong? As a result, this business can fail. So if you can touch base.
Let me answer
on those
both
two things
both
again.
parts. So first of all three of us are parents of toddlers. We experience this on a daily basis. And that's why we got together as a group to say, let's go solve this specific problem. So we have first-hand experience of actually sort of dealing with this type of a situation. We've given up our day jobs entirely. We come from corporate jobs, as well as Priya here has run a specific startup as a development executive. So we are now a group of business, development, and marketing come together, parents of children in this category. So we bring all of our personal and our corporate career experience to bear on this specific solving this problem, right? Number one. From a risk perspective, there is, you might have noticed that I talked about a customer acquisition cost of less than $20. Marketing is the one area that we're going to stay very focused on in terms of acquiring customers and the go-to-market strategy. Everything hinges, because this is a marketplace, everything hinges on acquiring customers at the right rate, within the right budget. And those are the two things. So we, in a worst case situation, if we're not acquiring the customers at the rate we want to, or we're spending too much to acquire them, that would be a warning sign for us. So that's why we identify those as two specific, what I would call as lean analytic metrics, that we will stay very laser sharp focused on. Okay?
Thank you.
Other questions?
The CAC of $20 seems low, small. How do you ensure that? Because your LTV is good, but you're assuming a lot of transactions per customer to get to that long-term value. But the CAC seems a little low. So is that realistic?
So let me answer the first part about how we get to the LTV, and we come back to the CAC. So LTV is really 20 transactions per quarter per customer, and a retention rate of 50%. So that gives us a long lifetime value of, for over a 2-year period, 8 quarters, $800. So in fact, I would argue that it's actually a very conservative number in terms of $800 per customer over a 2-year period, because that translates to 160 meals over a 2-year period. So we're hoping that actually we hit a bigger number than that. So that's sort of the one aspect. The second thing in terms of the customer acquisition cost of how do we get to $20? So as I mentioned to Mr. Tiaga here, we want to stay within a certain sort of a conservative number. We've tasked our marketing team to focus on specific go-to-market channels which will help us stay there, which is social media. You saw the description on Facebook groups, and communities that we can target. For example, we could go to a local Google, local Apple, some of the larger companies and say, that is our community we're going to focus on, and the marketing cost can be much lower. So we're trying to identify daycare centers, large corporations where we can get in there and then hit a much broader customer base than we would if you were to go one by one.
So you can advertise
over
the community.
Because it is a community focus and a trust is an important part of that internal community, we're going to use that more as a benefit for even keeping within the $20. Okay.
Great presentation. Question on following up on the same point. Biggest risk for a marketplace is all like about this vicious circle. So they bring which side of the market first, right? They never come at the same time. So how are you going to tackle? Are you going to, is the assumption that you will go to daycare centers and your target channels that you identified its niche and assume that the marketplace will form itself? Or are you going to do any targeted activities on focusing on supplier or the acquirer, arguably more the supplier than the acquirer, but what is the specific strategy there in the execution?
Very good question. So our marketing discussions have been in terms of actually focusing on both aspects to build the marketplace. So while we are trying to generate interest on the buyer side, recognize that the buyer can also be a seller. So this is not a Uber-like model where the driver is just the driver and the passenger is just the passenger. This is actually the driver can be a passenger as well at certain points in time. Because I'm a parent, I'm cooking. I might cook extra, and I can make it available to the marketplace. Tomorrow, I don't have time to cook, so I use the marketplace to get back to food, or get food back from the system. So on the one hand, it's slightly easier than a typical marketplace, but at the same time, we're trying to create buyers and sellers. So we're marketing to both the buyer and the seller, saying for a seller, the motivation is not the nourishing part of providing food for their child. It's actually the money they would get from potentially preparing more food than they needed for their own child, and they're saying, okay, here's more food available. I have an allergy kit. I prepared something special for my peanut allergy child. I can make it available to other children also.
So that's, and make money from that. On the other hand, for the buyer, the point is I'm getting home cooked food for the peanut allergy child that somebody has prepared anyway for their child, and I'm sharing that at the same time. So I'm going after both aspects. But our marketing activities are focused on in fact, creating both parts of it in a balanced way.
Yeah, I would just say that you need to have a stronger value prop for the sellers, so that they're incentivized to actually post something, so that the buyers can, when the buyers show up, if there's nothing to see, then there's a dependency there. So we would think about what's the value that seller can see when they actually, when they come to the platform, why should they be motivated? How do they make money? There's no buyers. That's a challenge there. I mean,
So, sorry, I think a good question, and I need to kind of rehearse the answer properly. But I think the one part of this, so let me go back to role play. So one part of this is that when we say we want to focus on daycares, this gives the seller the motivation of going to a daycare and being able to sell a lot more than just a single meal. So I'm potentially selling, let's say, 20 meals, and it's $100 for those meals for a very targeted community of one daycare and likewise. So the number of sellers, I don't need as many as the number of buyers. The number of buyers is potentially going to be multiple times the number of sellers, but the seller can go to specific like daycares, hospital clinics, etc. That's probably one part of the answer that I should include. Question?
Yeah, so Sanjay, great presentation. Question on more Ashish's point. So, what process have you gone through to validate the product with the customer so far? Do you have any tests that you have done? Can you talk? I have not seen that coming in the presentation. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So our marketing team has done extensive A/B testing with this community. First of all, the three validation points are what you find here in the founding team on the back over here itself. We are friends. Also, we have.
Sorry for interrupting. I mean, you're already starting to come up with answers to questions, which are really great. But I think we finished with the Q&A session. That was great. I was trying to save. I'll save you.
Sanjay, super.
I was just finishing sending the survey, so it took me some time to actually help you out here. But you stood your ground great. Great. Thank you very much.
Where's the money?
And thank you for those horrible questions.
That was a very good question, by the way.
Yeah,
Because I
yeah,
think
that's sure.
well thought out. All the questions were great, but I think that one really gets to something I can't talk about.
Okay, so I want to now take you back to where we started with the goals that we've set up for this workshop is to build a product or build an MVP, have a landing page, and have a presentation deck. Okay, just show of hands if you think we haven't reached those goals, or if you think we reached those goals.
The landing page needs to have a tweak to it.
Well, it could always be
It needs
better,
fixed.
okay?
It needs
But let me know if you feel
Not
that,
100%.
if anyone here feels that we haven't reached that goal.
I mean, my opinion is, I think from the thought process standpoint, like validating the 360 degrees of like the 12 items that we wanted to cover, I think we did. I think the ultimate deliverables are not polished, and then, so that definitely takes time. But I think we have covered most of the aspects, yeah.
We definitely.
Yeah, well, it's technically a wireframe type pre-duct type is not the same thing as an MVP. So, we didn't reach that objective, but I think this was a perfectly reasonable objective to have set though.
Okay, so I would say the 80-20 rule applies here. So we made in 20% of the time that we would usually, or actually that would be 2% of the time, but in a very short time we actually got us 80% of what we actually wanted to achieve. And if you think about it, all of you actually tried to come up with a company and set up a startup. How long would it take to get to a point where you actually have a pitch deck that you can pitch perfectly as Sanjay did, have a working prototype or working mock-up, okay, that would be the right definition for it, and have a landing page which can actually receive customers in there You can then A/B test it, do whatever you want with it. Logo, brand, which and tagline, which usually takes months to finalize. I think from my point of view, you definitely exceeded what I actually expected from us to achieve. And this is also, from what I've seen in other hackathons, way better results than most of the hackathons. But they were working in smaller teams as well. So
A round of applause for the whole team.
yeah, definitely. So now let's go back and start analyzing the product. From what I saw, I think I'm going to just tell you from my point of view, and then I'm going to open it for an open discussion. We took about 6 hours to kick off, okay, to actually sync the teams. We started out with the strategy team and the marketing team, trying to understand what's our responsibility, what is the strategy team responsible, what's the marketing team responsible of, and while those two were still figuring out what they should go after, the development team tried to assess their skills and try to understand what they can actually, what platform to work, and try to get some insights from the UX team, where the UX team was very, very independent and leading kind of the process of defining what the app should look like, how it should feel, and going through it, and they made a lot of progress. So in the beginning, surprisingly, the UX UI team was actually kind of leading the way. Once we got everyone together, I think dev team started the fail-fast process of trying to develop it the iOS way. Correct me if I'm wrong. And this eventually led out to a conclusion at the end of the day that the time left and the skills available were not compliant with the goals that needs to be achieved. And then we kind of stopped it and reassessed our situation. That kind of led to the decision to move to a Proto.io mockup, so scale down sort of the goal and the achievable and the deliverable that we were aiming at. While at the same time, marketing and strategy had good enough understanding of where they were going, starting to do the market research on the strategy team and analyzing very thoroughly the brand and the feel on the marketing team side. All of this kind of converged together by the end of the day, where everybody was on the same page, leading into the second day, where people focused solely on not overly analyzing and stuff and actually focusing on the deliverables, which was very, very nicely focused, very nicely prioritized and managed by you. And this actually led to a point by 3:30, there were no adjustments made by anyone, I think, until from this morning until 3:30, where we actually pitched what you just saw. So this is kind of the thing, what happened, what was it? I think the discussion point should revolve around, first of all, the development process, okay? How this applies to real life. I think there are a few learnings that, or points that Ilker brought up yesterday that I think are very, very applicable to how to develop or how to apply it, or I would say, when to move from consulting to development. I think this is kind of one of the learnings I wanted to discuss. And the second things are the learnings of the marketing and strategy. Okay, I think those teams actually did a great job, but they had a few fundamental questions that they struggled with, and I'd be happy if we can just bring them up and discuss them. So I'm opening it up for you guys to start to discuss those stuff. Let's start with the development. I think that was kind of the biggest issue that we had.
The things that I observed and the conclusion is, honestly, I think the best thing that everyone should take from this is what we've seen is very realistic in a sense that this is actually what many companies would see if you're trying to develop a startup in very similar forms. I think this was a great example that was condensed in like 16 hours or 17 hours, however, like depending on how you work. This really happens that way. the couple of key takeaways, first from a development perspective, is something that I will go back to what I said yesterday. It is very important to define what the end state is and being very realistic about it, which is not an easy thing, however experienced you may be, because you usually start with more aggressive targets, especially when it comes to engineering, because certain things to implement, the cost and complexity increases exponentially without you noticing that. So if you are feeling that you are close to the boundary at the beginning, that probably means that you are fall way short of what you're achieving that. That really is like almost the rule of thumb every time that happens. And I was observing that like during the presentation. Think about it, like how much time spent on building all the interfaces and how much time is spent on demoing. This is important for linking the goal to the effort that's linked. For this purpose, that was satisfactory. If that was a true MVP test in the hands of a customer, that wouldn't be satisfactory. But this is, I would say, it's key because the amount of effort, especially that's put in engineering, needs to be well linked to the initial goal, and that goal, keeping as small as possible is the best way, because engineering is going to be costly. Costly does not always translate to money, most of the time it will, but it can be a lot of time spent, and you may redo a lot of work, because UX team did a great job. I'll come back to that, because I think there's a very interesting thing to learn from that too as well. But the moment that you need to redo stuff, which you need to do a lot, you are incurring costs that are sunk costs. You just spend and you do a pivot. Whatever you can go with a proto-IO mockup, really, like, I mean, it's more than a mockup, it's an interactive thing. However much you can learn is very important. There's this concept called pre-totyping, not prototyping. I would recommend everyone to go and check that. It's a very short online book. It's worthwhile to read it, really worthwhile, because it shows the value of testing a product before it actually exists, used by the likes of IBM and others, and save them hundreds of millions of dollars in investments because just they quickly identify things. A simple proto-IO mockup, and you can see like how quickly that, and allow you to test the things. I think we've seen this one example. One other takeaway that I want to carry is the UX thing, right? There is this notion which I share. I did several products in my career, and in some of them I paid little attention to UX. And in my last one, day one, I got a great UX designer like the first time thing. It was a learned lesson for me. Let me tell you, it paid off very well. UX is not something that should be seen as what button is there and what color is there. There's that aspect of that, but I think that's been greatly demonstrated in the 2 days, because as Tommy said, they've taken a lead, because if you spend enough time in UX, that's defining your whole experience, which is then becoming a requirement for your development and others. It's worthwhile to have a dedicated UX thinking and a group of people who can think it. If you just see that as like, this button should be there and it's an afterthought, that's a missed opportunity. I witnessed, and I think this was, we saw this in this 16 hours. When it's done in a research mind, if you approach UX as a flow, that adds a lot to your value, and it decreases your development costs because you can get to your ultimate product quicker instead of just turning left and right, which is costly. That's all. So
just on that, what was the recommendation around the user flow? So you're saying developing user flows decreases development complexity?
Correct. If you spend enough time and testing that and validating that, the more you spend time proactively on it before jumping into the development and testing the things like proto-IO, prototyping, and all the other things, and validating, start developing later, not earlier. It's the counterintuitive part, because we all love, especially in Silicon Valley, like we have the technical backgrounds and we want to do the technical things first. Start it when you have as much data as possible. It will always be zigzags, left and right. But understand that those zigzags are the most costly ones.
I would expand, I would add to that, which is understand the user stories. And that leads to the user flows. And then you're representing it in a prototype or prototype manner. So you're really eliminating, think of the variability when you're starting out is, let's say on a scale of 1 to 10 is 10. But you want to bring it down to 3 or 2 or 4. So when you start developing, you've eliminated the variability, and therefore the risk of code churn, risk of losing, not understanding are you satisfying the right requirements? Now, in an ideal sense, that would be done in the customer validation process. You'll actually go talk to customers to understand the problem space. You'll come back and think about the user stories in order to create the solution space, create the prototype to go back and say, is this what you meant? Will this help? And they will then give feedback, and then you will end up with the MVP mockup, which will then you implement. That's the most efficient way to eliminate waste. And by the way, that prototype I actually have it. So the author is Alberto Savoia. Prototype it, make sure you're building the right it before you build it right. Very, very nicely said.
Just send the link to everyone.
Just now that you talked about it, let me give up that one example if you don't read it. There are several examples that I've read. I really highly recommend it. But the guy who built Palm Pilot, he had some failures before Palm Pilot. So when he decided went out to build Palm Pilot, this is the early days of, he carved something out of wood, just wood, and he started carrying it in his pocket. And when taking notes, well, let's have a meeting, and he's taking this wooden thing from his pocket and writing on it. Everyone looking at it, are you crazy? No, I'm not crazy. I'm trying to see if this is workable. And then he adjusts it and cuts and size and functionality. He took it to a degree on a wooden piece of thing for which became a Palm Pilot. Like, delay your development. I mean, hardware is worse, obviously, than software, but the concept applies. However far you can go for validating your ideas, you don't always need to code to validate ideas. Delay that as much as possible. At some point, it will be inevitable. You need backends and this and that. But the more you delay and continue to validate, the better you are.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I have a question. Excellent. Thank you for great presentation. So based on whatever we have learned in this short 16 hours, what could we have done differently to have this development also progressed further? The reason I'm asking that is we had a strategy team, we had a marketing team, UI and development team. Strategy, I thought in the first 6 hours at least we characterized what the product that we want to build, the customer segment, and what our short-term plans and long-term plans are. I think the marketing started executing to that. I'm trying to wonder, was it a communication
there were two things. I think the goal from the very beginning was very aggressive. I should have raised it.
Okay.
Making a fully functioning app in 16 hours is doable if you have a development team, and several of them, one person is not enough, who have done similar projects in the past and can simply start coding and without thinking or needing to do any research. If you pause for a moment because a component is unknown to you, you can't do it. That's too aggressive. That was our yeah. We should have raised the flag up from the very beginning. This is too aggressive of a goal. If we can build a functioning thing like this in 16 hours, I mean, imagine the amount of that. What could have happened? That could have been demoing a very ugly looking app, which had the functionality, but the experience would be worse because you want to see what it looks like. It's the feel that's more important than if there's a database behind the scenes, because a database is not going to look like anything to you unless you don't see something of a functioning thing. That should have been done from the very beginning. The second thing I think that could be done is that could have been understood along the process better. I was observing, I could sense, but you also need to manage in a way because you need to let people to come to some conclusions, because disrupting that flow in real life or even in a workshop is you need to let people follow their own thought processes and come to some conclusions. You can cut it a little short, but if you cut it too short, it's not a nice experience, and that's not the whole point of this thing, right? But I would say this is again 16 hours. The time that adjustment was made, it was, I think, very timely. In real life, you won't see that adjustment made and being recognized. That will come much later and a much costly thing. The course correction came at the right time, and the goals are achieved in a sense that the realistic goals was enough time that they were achieved. So that's also another lesson. Course correction didn't come too late in a way that the thing wasn't.
Actually, go ahead, sorry.
I just want to add, I think it really helped us, that was just 2 of us, from the UI, UX. We could sit there and think and wonder and ponder and discuss and kind of find our way and then come back, and it was less of opinions, we could just sort of settle down and try to figure it out. So small teams matter. So on the dev side, I would say, first of all, as you're doing research, there's a lot to think about. So there's a certain sequentiality you want to achieve. Let's assume this is all done in parallel, so it was hard to do. But you want to be able to distill the requirements down enough to say, you know what, let's go think about the following 5 things. And then break up the teams into smaller groups and give them specific things to go think about. How would you do this? How would you do that? And their goal is not to code. Their goal is to architect. Their goal is to really understand. There's a UX team on the front end. If the dev team can go figure out, okay, what platform technologies are needed here? What do we need to do? What exists out there? Do some research. De-risk, not the coding, but the architecture and the build-out that will be needed. Come back with some estimates. How long will it be? So you're not looking for the deliverable as app is working. You're looking for how long will it take? What skills do we need? What technologies do we need for this to make it scalable, to make it blah, blah, blah. That would have been a more realistic output. And then, of course, when you do that, you still, and you can sort of map it out saying, no, we're going to build a prototype, but we need, one of the things that we did not do here is to scope out the complexity of building the app. And I would say any workshop should exit with that, saying, we have this prototype, it's going to take us X man-months with this team size to reach this level of whatever completeness it is for the MVP. So you can project meaningfully. Can we get it done in 3 months? How do you know? The team would have investigated that.
This is very powerful, Tommy and Ilker and Ashish. This is real. So when I go do my startup, what I've learned is the prototyping is the key, or whatever pre-typing is the key. The very simple thing is that aspects you guys brought up. You would know it sooner in a matter of days or weeks as opposed to months.
Yeah, definitely.
Great, thank you guys.
So, I think my question maybe like what I learned is more from the early phases. So I put people generally like into 2 categories. So either you're a business or a technical when you're starting a company. So being myself as a technical product development guy, I tend to think more when I have an idea, then what features would make sense to the product, then how I go about building it. But working in the strategy and then closely with marketing, I realize that it is a business that you are trying to build, right? It's a business that you are trying to sell to the investors. It is very important. I mean, I started come to the realization before you even go and do the validation of the prototyping, right? I think I realized it's very important to validate your idea in terms of the business viability of your idea. At least, many times you spend hours probably, thinking through various things, but I didn't know personally that, there are so many aspects to it, right? Thinking about like MVP and the next 6 months, like how the marketing is going to work, how we go about doing this. Does it make sense as a business? Like what is the customer acquisition cost, etc. I mean, I feel somehow that so before you even figuring out the features and then etc. You should at least the business viability and then at least documenting and then thinking through the business areas of it. I think that is very important.
I agree with that.
For example, like say, I have an idea in my head, and then I have not partnered with anybody yet. It's still in my head. I started thinking through. So, I mean, unless it is a technology-intensive kind of like product, I mean that's the conclusion I'm trying to draw. So, what do you guys think about? Is that how you feel?
The perception is changed because you can take an app like a WhatsApp. It doesn't make any money, but it was acquired because it has 400 million users. So there's no business model behind it, but it's still a valuable company because of its users.
But you're saying
so
you want to validate the market before you actually commit.
Yeah, when I say business,
yeah, you need to validate who the customers are and what's the end purpose. Because a lot of these startups, especially in tech, they don't start because they want to take money from customers. They come in to solve a problem, and then and you get the users, and then they start thinking about monetization. So a lot of them start this way, which is okay for some models, but not every model.
Yeah, I didn't mean.
I actually would
yeah.
not recommend starting a business. So unless you know exactly what you're doing, pursuing the customer, getting the social media approach where you go for customer acquisition, having 100 million users, and then finding the business model.
It doesn't work for
It
every
doesn't
model.
apply for any of us,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Unless we already have
About
6
it,
accidents.
doesn't work for every model.
And we go back in time to 1996 where there was this tech bubble. But basically, these are very dangerous business models, not worth the risk.
But I think to answer your question.
Yeah, so I want to hear more thoughts on
one
that.
thing that certainly shouldn't be done, and we couldn't have, the workshop structure doesn't enable that, is to go talk to actual parents, buyers and sellers, 10 of them, 20 of them, hear what they have to say, because that's your, and how much will they be willing to pay? There are sort of questions you can ask. You don't have to go and do Facebook marketing blasts. Simple, sit down with them and understand how, do they want meals delivered in 15 minutes? Look at the assumption we made, 3 hours freshness. I mean, if you look at but the thing is, it's the chicken and the egg problem. You got to spend enough time thinking about the potential problem in your mind. Here's the candidate problem. I'm going to flush it out to the next level of conceptual whatever. It doesn't need 20 people to do that. Sit down and say, this is what I think. It may look like this, may look like that. Maybe you do some basic prototyping, but then you go get out of the building and you go talk to some customer saying, I'm thinking this, what do you think? And they will give you the feedback. Then it either gives you the gut feeling, yeah, there is something here that I can go to the next step. But it's all about going to the next step. It's not, and I think the way you said it is very apt. Validate before you commit. So the commit is key. Are you committing an evening or 5 meetings? Or are you talking about committing, I'll quit my job and I'll save $200,000? There's a difference. Yeah. And that validation is needed to know where to draw the line.
Yeah. I want to add something to that. So one of the things we did here is we kind of posted assumptions, and there was a lot of discussion around, is it 3 hours? Is the customer cost $20? Are we going to be able to reach 125,000? So there were a lot of assumptions because we were kind of in a virtual machine type of environment where we were very closed in, and I didn't ask you to go out to actually talk to customers. But this is a real life situation where you have to come up with an assumption on something or an hypothesis on something, and you usually you have no clue. Okay, the 3 hour freshness is a great example. Okay, so how do you solve that? And usually what happens is that people go and say 1 hour, no, 4 hours, 2 hours, 7 hours, 2 days. Put something down, go with your gut, do an average, okay, and then move on. Okay, use it as an hypothesis, but it doesn't end here. Okay, it doesn't end just to write it down. You also have to articulate how you're actually gonna test this. Okay, so when you write down an hypothesis, even if it starts with your gut assumption, okay, say I'm gonna test it this way. Okay, and this is very applicable to the phase that we were in. Okay, if you write down an assumption, if you don't know something, use your gut as a base point or a benchmark for your assumption, and find a method or a process to test it.
Okay. I'll add to that. I think both are great points. To validate the market, you need to figure out how far do you need to go for validating that. It's just because there are many ways, and I think I think it can be in addition to this workshop. Some of the hackathons that we attended is one thing that you can add to your workflow, like the ones that we won. This is honestly like one of those things. When there's a competition jury and there are VCs or investors type coming, do this if you do a hackathon. And I think that should be included in the format the next time because that ties to that. It's a validation concept. Run a survey. We did that. It's a very easy thing these days, right? You go and paste a $10 thing on Facebook and you get like 200 respondents, and then they fill in the survey. Or depending on the location, this wasn't good, but like, okay, something in San Francisco, we built this mock-up that pretended to be a real ad and sent the people on the streets just, they walked around for 2 hours and tried to get like people's feedback and recorded on the video. Oh, one looks at it, oh, this is great. This is like, my child would love this, etc. etc., whatever we were trying there, and put it in front of investors as market validation. Well, we developed it in this way that has these weaknesses. It works very powerfully. Like, if you start pushing your brain into validating something by using some tools and whatever is available, you can validate so many things for so cheap that it's surprising. Because, like, I think that can be added. Like, this concept, within the 2 days, I think we could insert some surveys and things into the structure that could be validated.
Exactly.
And I think
That's what I was thinking, right? If we had- Yesterday, so last night, we could have sent out a survey, Dana, right? If we add that in the structure, I would have had probably some useful information. And as you said, it's inexpensive, the tools are available, right?
So when I was doing the thing with Nick before we ended, what we did, I mean, he had done a bunch of surveys with real customers, and there was real data that we had looked at, that when I came in, looked at that, but we didn't just stop there. We went and he had talked to a couple of customers. When I pushed him, and we worked very closely to do this kind of mock-ups and market fit confirmation and customer validation. We went to specific customers, actually met them. And these are real customers. These are real admins, real products, and we sat across and marketing, yeah, blah, 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 fine. But then they see the thing and they see the mock-up show up. And then they sit up like that. Oh, this is nice. Oh, no, yeah. Oh, that is nice. And then the key question which confirms it is, are you building this? Are you guys really building this? So if you're building this, I'll do a beta.
Yeah.
Right there we knew that whatever we did was actually worth something, and then we asked the question, are you willing to pay? Yeah.
This is very powerful, but you need to be careful from users who are saying, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll buy it.
Granted, you never really know.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that reality check, when they are sitting across, it tells you that at least you're on the right path. They may not actually show up ever as a customer, but if you don't do that step, so the combination is very key. You do the survey with a larger population or the sample, and then specific conversations on the specific approach that you're taking, and then hope that the actual market shows up.
Just to wrap up on this one quick comment, sorry.
Question. Go ahead.
No, that's the same point.
So next time when we do it, like a week before, if we could do a little primer on this survey and other things.
Next time we'll do it.
When we do the hackathon, right?
You'll be fired.
Yeah, see, I'm coming back because these are the tools. You introduce as people think about it for.
The goal is actually building companies, not doing workshops. I know you have fun, but there are amusement parks that sell fun.
Sorry.
I think Steve was.
Or maybe he has. I want to go ahead. Give it to you.
So I think what Ashish said, I think it's very, very important. What I've seen is such lots of companies, and I've heard lots of horror stories as well. They went ahead and did a survey of very limited set. They said, okay, it's a fabulous idea. They did not validate clearly that actually people will buy it, because it was a survey. So they said, yeah, we will buy it. They had no idea whatsoever. Actually build the whole company, or at least they spend quite a lot of money into it and all that stuff. Ultimately, it became like it's a one sort of a product. It became more like a customer project, more as compared to a product. So I think it has to be very well done, and I think it all depends on what type of things you're selling. I think it all depends on how the validation needs to be cultivated accordingly.
So to have what you need, because the process you're saying has a lot of benefit, but also has a lot of false positives. Okay, that's the problem with sitting with someone, showing him a mock-up and saying, will you buy it? Sure. If you build it, I'll come. But it takes you 6 months, and then you say, actually, you know what? I didn't know it would cost this. Oh, you didn't do this feature. So you need to have a de-risking and constant validation process in there. Okay, so this is something that a lot of people don't really realize, and it applies to everything. For example, for funding. Okay, I would say don't go for the big lot. Okay, everybody wants, perfect example is, how much are you raising? So you have a prototype, you did your prototype, how much I need $20 million for the next 5 years, and I'm done with funding. Of course, yeah, you will need 20, but nobody will give you that. And so the way to go about it is go by 200K at first time, maybe then go to $1 million, and 5 million, and break it down. Okay, so the same thing needs to apply to the building of the product and validating it. don't forget that your product is going to change. The development team is going to say, actually, this is not possible, or this is going to cost you blah, 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 and you have to reevaluate. So you have to input a de-risking and a reevaluation process or revalidation process into your weekly team meetings, okay? This is something that is super valuable. I think all of you who worked in the corporate world, this is something that you always do, so why not applying it to the startup?
So I think it seems like a B2C space, maybe it's easier to, where you have like easy access to tools, and then I think in the B2B space, I think that there is no shortcuts.
Actually, it's the opposite.
No. I would just completely other approach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So B2B is easier. Yeah. Because
Companies know what they want.
Yeah, companies are, so B2B, basically you have less customers, okay? You might be in a situation where you have 100 customers and you have 100% of the market.
Let me explain, let me sort of add some color. I think neither is the reality. It depends. B2B, the sales cycles are very long. And getting to the customer is very hard. Because these are proprietary, sometimes corporate customers, you don't even know how to reach them. So, therefore, when you do reach them, you have to really do due diligence. Is this the right product? You're not going to have too many chances of talking to them and all that. But in some ways, once you get that conversation going, it's easier because once they latch onto once you have latched onto their pain, and you're building something of value, it's a relationship you can build, and it's a lot of it driven by that because it becomes easier after a while. But I think the initial finding them and engaging them is hard. B2C, you can do Facebook stuff and you can find a set of customers, but I would not say it's easy or hard in the way, it really depends, but they have very unique properties.
I will somewhat disagree, somewhat add on to them. The sales cycle, yes, but the beauty of B2B, customers tell you their requirements. If you can get there, that's usually how that is born. This is the best thing for building a product. If I have a customer who tells that what they need and I know that it's not being done, and I know how it's done, perfect. Like, the risk is less as long as you have a customer, which you usually have because your previous relationships and everything, right? If that's your background, which is an assumption. They tell you the requirements, you go, good. B2C, you don't have a single customer. You need to somehow gauge from all these different components because you will get a lot of false positives. People will say, oh, this is a great idea. Will you pay for it? Some will immediately step back and some will say yes, but they will never show up. That's a little like vague, so you need to find a way. Is this person my lead user? Can you identify a lead user? There are things like that. Find a lead user. If you really find a lead user, you get the requirement.
I was in touch with them. Today, I mean, there were a lot of assumptions done here, so it's different. But it was mind-blowing when I saw that. When you see the cost of customer acquisition and the revenue, or you start even rethinking, is this idea, I think that's such I don't know how early you can do that, but that was eye-opener. Should you pursue with that idea or no?
That's
and
the validating the market before you.
So that's a big thing, I mean, because I could understand so B2B, I think the acquisition cost, I think you can time it with just one, but when you're thinking of the big pool, yeah, it's something, I don't know if there is one easy way or the other, but.
Yeah, could you say a little more about the de-risking? I guess with the revalidation, you're talking about doing iterations of going back to customers with incremental improvement, potential customers with incremental improvements.
So you always need to have those questions in the air. Will they use it? Will they buy it? Will they pay for it? Okay, and a lot changes also in your product, in your development, your understanding of how you're going to build it, and also with the customer. So things are not static. Okay, things are always changing and dynamic in the market, and unless you can ask someone, "What's your pain?" Okay, this is your pain. Tomorrow I'll give you a product. If you can do that, that's perfect. They'll definitely pay for it. But since it takes time and rolling out the product takes time, you always need to be sure that you're on the same time. So even if you started building something, mid-process, go back to your assumptions, recheck them. Okay. By the way, there is an interesting approach to that. Because money is always a constraint, okay? So I can't remember where I read it. I think in Lean startup, it was mentioned that you should always work with, map your assumptions and map your, basically your assumption on these two charts. So one of them is impact, or I would say this one is cost, and this one is impact, okay? So let's say you have a number of assumptions. So we kind of said 3 hours, okay? Now, you're saying, okay, what would be the impact of this assumption being wrong? How much of an impact would it have on my business? And how much would it cost me to validate it, okay? So let's say proving that would go to a very expensive lab, and they would do these 3-month testing, and it would cost me like $50,000, okay? So the cost would be pretty much very high, but the impact would also be high. And let's say I have another one that has another assumption that we had today. Let's say, I don't know, customer acquisition costs or whatever. And let's say that the impact of it would be also very high, but the cost of it is very low to achieve, okay? So if you have a number of those, okay, mapped out, all your assumptions, mapped out them, now you can pick what would be the easiest or the cheapest ones to validate or to eliminate in order to decide if it's a make or break on your business. So for example, instead of trying to go after that one, let's try and prove that one first, okay? Because if this one kills the business, okay, this one doesn't matter at all, okay? So now this is a very interesting process and mapping, a visual way to actually map.
Tell me, there's one more direction to that, is the time as well?
Sure, you
cost
can,
and time,
cost
which
is
is
time.
huge.
Cost is time,
Cost
okay?
is time.
So if it takes you 3 months, then multiply it by the burn rate, okay? So go for the easy, the high impact, low cost first, try to prove them. That is a very, very interesting way to actually use that, okay?
I just want to add to that, which is, I guess it feeds into what you said earlier about the raising only the money you need to raise. There's a very important concept that I learned from first from that Berkeley book. It was a VC who wrote this book, Raising Venture Capital. A few years ago, it's a stale, old now. But then you see that very often, which is milestone based. So when you raise $1 million, right? You set some expectations of milestones. What will that 1 million get us? We'll get so many customers, have the product out, blah, blah, blah. By managing those assumptions and de-risking them, what are you trying to do? You're ultimately trying to raise money at cheaper and cheaper valuation. How do you do that? By increasing the valuation of the company. So therefore you do that by saying, today I'm going to come into you with whatever I've done so far, I'm going to raise 1 million on, let's say, 3. I'll lose X%. But then my goal, my purpose in life as an entrepreneur is to raise that 3, post then becomes 4, to raise it to 6 or 7, whatever. I do that by de-risking, because if I don't do that, next time I go back for money, they're going to say, well, there are all these risks, you're not de-risked the business or the technology or the product, you don't have customers, you have not proven traction. But think about that in that concept of when you go for the next round, you must raise the valuation. So your execution in that, whatever 1 million got you, is to de-risk the business, all aspects through that model. I think that's powerful. It's easy. Once I understood that, I understood how the VCs were thinking.
Yeah, definitely. The VCs are definitely, they call it inflection points, okay? They say inflection points, which means that once you de-risk one part of the business, the valuation shoots up, and that's the inflection point, okay? So they're basically looking at it, okay, so let's see what happens at the next inflection point. What will trigger the next inflection point, and that's it. That's the value, the assumptions or the validation points that you check off, okay? And you should prioritize them based on the cost and the impact, okay? Don't go after this one, because this has zero impact on your business, okay? Or even this one's the worst. So this model is a very interesting thought process. You should do that once a month. Make connected to this.
One of
the very interesting examples of this one I heard from the founder of Aruba. I was at an event where he was a guest speaker. Now he's like an IPO company sold to HP Security, obviously, but very successful, brilliant guy. He was talking about his own stories. He did 3 startups, I think, or I might be wrong in the number. One was successful, the second one was very unsuccessful, and he was explaining why that was unsuccessful. That's the risking thing. Because they raised so much money because they had credibility and everything, and they assumed that they knew everything, and then just went ahead without de-risking anything and thinking about or validating anything for however long time. By the time they came to the market, there was no buyers because what they built, they thought was brilliant, had no outcome. So, like someone like this can make that mistake just because self-confidence, like the previous, of course we know this, like why do we need to do that? And then they brought to the next one, Aruba, which is, apparently he learned his lesson.
It's a great point. I mean, just, applying this to what we did, you just raised $1 million for 18 months. How much of the business is going to change in 18 months? I would say it would do like 300%. Okay, so at least 3 pivots in 3 months. Okay, so why not break it down? Why not make it a lot more easier? Okay, just we didn't really go into the funding strategy, but this is something that kind of lacked insight in the deck. And the way I would approach it, I would say, okay, instead of what you did is $1 million for 18 months, okay, and X milestones. Okay, let's say 7 milestones. Why not? That 1 million. Which kind of investor will give you 1 million? What type of investors? Is it?
Combination of angels.
Okay, so it's a combination of angels. So combo of angels. Okay, and the VCs usually. So slash VCs. Okay. Do you think VCs would be interested in our stage of the company?
No.
Okay, so we're out. So now we need to go after a combination of angels. So it's enough to try to convince one to actually invest in us. Okay, and how much what's the ticket size of an angel investor? Okay, so we find some angel investor. You meet him in a Starbucks. Is he going to write you a $500,000 check? No. What's the ticket size?
25K, maybe.
Okay, so how many angels do we actually need? Let's say they go for 50, okay, you need at least 20, okay? So if convincing one is tough enough, try to convince 20, okay? Of course, the last one will be very easy, but the first one will be pretty tough. He'll say, show me you have at least 18 and I'll come in, okay? So I would say if you apply the funding strategy on our small project that we have here, that would be a very, very unrealistic investment strategy. I would go breaking it down. Okay, so that means that would get us X or 7, and I just made up the number of proving points. Let's break it down. Let's say, in order to get this proven and this proven, okay, just two proving points, I would need actually just, instead of 18 months runway, I would need 6 months runway, okay? And that will translate into, let's say 250, okay? Okay? Now we definitely don't need to focus on VCs, okay? But instead of getting 20 angels, we can just get maybe 2. We can even find one sucker, okay? Okay, well, we will have to be very well connected for that, okay? Ty will do that. So this is actually a much more realistic funding strategy on our plan, so breaking it down instead of having 18 months. Nobody would say, look, I'm not going to give you an 18-month runway for you to be unaccountable for, okay? So this is sort of my feedback on the funding strategy that we didn't actually have time to cover and go into good enough. Okay.
One counter argument to that, though, is it does make sense purely from a funding availability strategy. That's going to burn you out as an investor. Sorry, as a founder, because a typical investment round, well, for a project like this, might be small because like the concept is an app, right? That's it, so minor. But if you have like 6 months of process, of getting funding, you close your funding, you literally need to start working on your next funding. So your founder is constantly on the look for finding funding, right?
Yeah. So that's the price you pay of being a founder and CEO of a startup. Okay, that's your job. The CEO of the company, that's his job. Okay? If you don't have money to pay your employees, unless they work for free, and then you start giving them equity, which dilutes everyone, and it's not sustainable. Okay? Equity, handing out equity works with co-founders and applies to the first 4, 5 people in the company. But if you really want to build something, okay, if you really want to achieve 12,000 users, okay, you cannot do it with 2, 3 co-founders. Okay, so you are, as a CEO, are responsible of keeping the lights on in the office, and that means you need to focus on funding. The first round would be 250, but that would show traction. That would show you are an executing team. Okay, you are able to execute. You're able to utilize funds correctly in order to de-risk the business, and then you go back to these investors and say, look, I did my job. I even did it well. Okay, and now I want you to give me $1 billion. Okay, after that round, you already have 2 guys who are gonna vouch for you, maybe give you more money from their pocket. They're gonna introduce you to their network, so you're gonna have an easier time fundraising, and the VCs are gonna look very kindly on you because you already have people who have skin in the game and you've convinced them. So maybe this is not something that would get you running a long way, but it would definitely improve yourself for the next round. We kind of touched this in one of our sessions yesterday, I think, where you need to build your funding strategy in a way that gets you the next round, okay? So you need to build a company and work right now in a way, or fund the milestones that are gonna get you to the next round. And that's kind of the logic behind this, okay? That not only applies to the proving points, but also applies to the funders, okay? The investors who don't invest.
And just to add that there are always exceptions to every rule. There are VCs and there are teams based on the caliber of the people.
Yeah.
2 people with excellent technical background or whatever, no prior startup experience. If they are quitting, they believe in the idea so when they are quitting,
that's a strong thing.
They quit on conditional, this is real, this is not made up. They will meet the VCs, show the pitch and all that, and based upon conditional commitment, they'll quit. And they can raise 2 million. I know people who have raised 2.7 million seed, who are so capable that, and these are people who are CTO of big short companies can validate, yeah, this is good.
He's gonna build it.
He's going to build it. These are real people. So it's possible with the right team to get funding with no prior, but then obviously they are banking on the capability of those 2 people to not only build but attract other people. Because ultimately that's the seed, right? So there's exceptions to everything, but as a norm, I think it's reasonable that plan for 6 to 9 months of execution runway and 2 to 3 months of fundraising in the next round, just as a rule of thumb.
That's the CEO's job. Okay, let's move forward.
Yeah, so my question is, was the prototype enough in investor setting, right?
No.
Or
it depends on which investor. I would say with our prototype, we would get, that would be enough to give us a chance. And with a chance, I would say, 50K, 150K, but definitely it won't go to VC. VCs.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
VC is a major league.
So you say that you can actually, without a prototype, you can actually go and somebody might give us 100, right?
Yeah.
So from that standpoint of that someone giving us 100, why would he give you $100,000?
It would be someone you know, someone who trusts you, someone you are warmly introduced to, someone who is interested in the market, and someone who is not really smart. Okay, these are yeah, no, these are the people who invest. These are the people who invest. Okay, they call that round the FFF round. Okay, friends, family, and fools. Okay, because they don't know business, they have some spare money, they get excited, okay, and that's the beauty of the FFF round. No due diligence is done, okay, no due diligence. They won't interfere with your company. They will annoy you. They'll call you every 5 minutes asking, what about my money? Okay? But they're not smart. That's not smart money. And they won't get you into, you know, your market.
So why go, you know, because when you raise money, you know, the way that I look at it is for two reasons. One is because you need to support your development or whatever not. The other reason is a lot of the time you need the person that's giving you the money because of his connections. You need him to open some doors for you. So why go to these people in the first place if, you know, if they can't open any doors?
Yeah, we've just talked to it. I've talked about it, Ashish and I, and saying the Cinderella story of you coming up with a proto.io, pitching it to someone in a Starbucks, and he's giving you $100,000. That rarely happens today. Okay, but you will. So that rarely happens because usually you know you need to prove a lot of things that people think, you know, I did the proto.io, so why not? I mean, the proto.io is nice, but it doesn't cover for the execution, you know, the quality of the team, and doesn't necessarily prove that you can take it forward from there. If you can, that's great. Okay, then probably a stranger will come in. But usually at this point, you would have to put some money on your own. That would move you from.
I want to say that
yeah.
Both examples I've seen firsthand, which is high net worth individuals who typically have millions, who are looking to invest 25, 50K, whatever. I know people who know friends, but you must have quit. You can only sitting on the sidelines, and you must be really passionate. They must see the excitement, feel the excitement. They may not know the business, but they know that you are onto something that you believe in. They'll be willing to take a chance, and they want to see that you've quit. And they're not opening any doors. Although they might, because they're high net worth, they'll know people. But at that point in time, they're just banking on you or betting on you. I've also seen the example of people who are fools, kind of, who come and say, oh, I heard you're doing a startup. They are doctors or doctors' wives, and I won't name. But they come and say, oh, I said, yeah, so how much, you know, I would really love to invest. So typically they're thinking 25, 30K. And then I tell them, are you prepared to lose the money? Because you may get nothing. I may lose money in a year. And they're like, huh? And then they say, yeah, let me think about it. And then never come back.
So a real story. 10 years ago, I think, or 7 years ago, a friend of mine from my squadron, a very close friend, was super talented, comes up to me and says, I left the military, I set up a startup, e-commerce program for students in Israel. We're looking for money. Do you want to invest? I said, sure, why not? I put in 50,000 shekels, which is about $10,000. A year later, business goes bust. Okay, I got 5,000 shekels back, so 1,000. I lost 90% of my money, and he just paid me out of his pocket. So I had no idea what the business was. I didn't know how to read a business plan. I was, you know, I was a perfect fool, okay? And I was following my friend, and you know what? Everyone can fall into that trap, and he was so exciting, and I wanted to invest. So you'll find people who are willing to put money. Okay, I was the guy who was willing to put money into a company, and I was the perfect fool. Okay, so there are always people like that out there. I don't know if you want to take their money. Okay,
but they will catch you in a dinner party.
Yeah.
Hey,
exactly.
How's this going? Is everything okay? Every month if you see them, I mean, so you don't want to go. But if you're trying to get off the ground, that's the only option you have. You pick your.
I think people should also, you know, before they go and start thinking about getting money from investors, they should really dive into and try to dissect if it's possible to bootstrap the business. Because it's always, you know, and a lot of people miss that, and they don't even think about that. They think, okay, I'll just build something or do a product before, you know, because you can, a lot of times, you can actually do a lot of legwork and earn your first customers without the need of money or anything else. And you can, you know, the problem is that people don't leverage current platforms that can help them bring a product to life. A lot of people, you know, they go into that, you know, like head first without exploring a lot of platforms, or a lot of services that can actually help them to bring that product and test it. And you can save yourself a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of headaches, and really focus on bringing that thing to life instead of, because I think, a lot of the people in Silicon Valley especially, it's kind of a disease here. Not a disease, but kind of like a bug that I have to build a startup and go to VCs and raise money. But you can definitely do bootstrapping businesses.
Always better. Always better.
Yep.
Let's hear from someone who didn't talk. If there are any other topics.
I believe in terms of marketing, we didn't reach the level where we had the chance to talk to the development team in thorough details. So I believe if the workshop was longer, or we have achieved like next phases in the product itself, we'll start having gaps there. Because if we want to market a feature, or now we have like the market strategy with some sort of phases and milestones for users and number of users and so on. We cannot achieve such thing without the feature being there, without actually the ease of use, the user experience, and these things. We didn't have the chance to actually connect with the development team to discuss these issues. But I'm sure that out of my experience, actually, this is a big part of which startups will face and would be major changes in coding and development, as Alker said before. So that would be also a gap to look for, and just try to avoid it as much as possible. Also,
so the disconnect between marketing and development.
Exactly. Yeah.
For that matter, development and disconnect with all the other teams is a general problem I've seen every startup. Because again, I don't blame the development team, because engineers have their own things going on in their head. So even CEO talking, they don't really listen to them.
Yeah, I believe sales usually use face that with the
because they're like thinking about the bug fixing or how to do this. It is not happening. So they're in a different state of mind. So that is the most difficult problem, I think, because given that your 50% of the burn is happening on the R&D here. So how do you get that synergy going? So that's a major challenge. So coming back to that, there was a context of bringing an architect who or she can bring. So architect can play a huge role, but architect is a pivotal for any success of many of the startups I have seen. So finding that person is the biggest challenge. Developers cannot be an architect.
Usually the product manager.
Yeah, that's not more than an architect.
More than an architect, not just
you need a product person.
Product person who understands. So for a startup, you can't have a dedicated product manager. You can't have a dedicated front-end architect, back-end. Somebody who can do all it to a certain point, but do it right.
Good point. Jan, do you have anything? Donna?
No, I learned a lot. One of the things, just from yesterday, I think that sometimes when we were in the marketing side and the strategy side, I felt like the marketing side was kind of going on and doing some things that the strategy was doing. So I would like to see them work together. Yeah. And in fact, separating out the marketing and strategy, sometimes those were just the similar tasks, and I think they could work together easier and be a little bit more streamlined, I think, in the strategy and the presentation and the following work that goes for the presentation.
Also, usually the case once you have like founder or CEO, you have a decision maker at the end of the day. So if there's like two different approaches or two different paths of which you're confused which one to take, you'll get back to the decision maker, and they'll just make sure that all parts of the company or department are aligned together and in sync. So this is also very important. Even in each and every team, we should have this is like the team leader of which you refer to, just to make sure that you want to get this type of information as soon as possible and get out.
I agree. Anything?
I think Donna pointed out, because I think yesterday it was an eye-opener when I saw 100 billion in 5 years and no data point behind it. So just too out of for all of us.
So that was a sort of a
Yeah, because we
a
were thinking of a
benchmark.
different.
It wasn't an actual projection.
So it was, so as soon as we saw that number, right, being listed, we were thinking about some other strategies. We did not view, first of all, we did not know about the customers, and now we started thinking, how do we reach 100 million without any data point at all in the first place?
Yeah,
So I think the coordination, the more coordination there is, I think that will go along.
Yesterday, I was just, from yesterday to today, I was going around the different teams and just to peek at what they're up to. So I saw so much was done, but that was not reflected in the presentation. So I just want to tell that, I mean, you could say that that was a foundation for this presentation, but there will be a lot of time teams could be wasting time on, which may not matter much. So cutting those things, okay, we're wasting time here, that's very critical, I think.
Yeah.
That's what might take from this.
I agree. Jinya? Jinhua? Yeah. Sorry. Jen.
I think like Ashish has covered a lot of points that I was going to bring up. So.
Sorry.
I think everybody covered the points well. So upfront collaboration, like there was much. We did a better job at upfront collaboration. Like and there were issues initially because everybody were thinking it was very siloed. Like I think it took some time for us to kind of get on the same page.
Yeah.
But eventually we did, and I think
Well, anything to add?
Oh,
I always mispronounce your name. so-
Kalpana.
Kalpana.
No, I think.
Shanti, we haven't heard from you.
No, I just was thinking that in a real case, you would have your strategy already done. So we wouldn't be doing it all at one time. So it felt.
You think?
It's more sequential.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Not kind of.
So it felt a little bit, yeah, so it felt a little more, I think, confusing to me at times because of that. We were trying to understand the higher level concept and execute.
But you see the word.
Yeah. And also, this my only one question is, I heard that if you crowdfund, then it can devalue your brand. Do you like
Crowdfund?
for
Or-
VCs, you know?
So crowdfunding is not relevant for us. Maybe equity crowdfunding, because crowdfunding, it's basically you get funded by the customers who buy your product before that. But you don't have anything to sell. So,
Right, you're probably talking about equity crowdfunding?
No, just in general, like. to
In
get
terms
on
of
the
validation, I guess.
So equity crowdfunding platforms, I really believe in them, but they're not for that
What's
type of. Sorry?
What's equity crowdfunding?
Equity crowdfunding is like getting a band of investors to buy equity in your company in the crowdfunding method instead of buying the product. Okay, so there are these are two different ones. So if you want to, crowdfunding is basically pre-sale.
That's right.
Okay, equity crowdfunding is pre-investing. So you take a band of investors, you put them into a special vehicle that kind of incorporates them into one. They have one voice, okay, but everybody has a small investment in it, and they take a chunk of your company. Okay, it's like a.
That was recently allowed by law.
Right.
Yeah.
Last year.
Right, it was
Exactly.
recently allowed by law, but it's
Yeah, in
not
UK
quite, there are a lot of investors
Yeah,
who
yeah,
feel
yeah.
like that's a bad thing to be doing.
Normally, you have to
So-
be an accredited investor to invest, and like
Yeah,
a VC or an angel or whatever.
something like
This would open it up to individual, like even I can go and say, I want to only have $500.
Right.
It's basically designed to let the average Joe.
Yeah, well, it can create issues with having a capitalization table. No VC wants to see
It
thousand
complicates
rows
the
in.
deal.
So
Okay, it complicates
so there's
VC
ways
deal.
around it, but it's
VCs
complicated, and it's, at this point, it's so early, investors aren't necessarily comfortable with it yet. Maybe once it's been around a little longer, things will be different.
Well, actually,
The regular crowdfunding, on the other hand, non-equity, is very different. That investors can, if it goes well, see that as a big positive, in that you haven't given away equity yet, but you've proven out your market.
Roy?
Just a couple of observations. Again, yeah, and because of the two groups that I had more input with was, between the marketing and strategy, and sort of looking at something, the chasm that is created between looking at something high level, or the vision, if you like, and then the execution, that, and what can get lost in translation. So that's, and I guess that's about, having your vision, having it down, and infecting the rest of the group, and they know exactly how to execute on that. So I think that kind of was a lesson for you. It's pretty important to have that. And it's also trying to create passion around something that's not your own idea. That's
Did it work?
yeah, I think everybody was very, very highly involved, but I would see that it's very hard if you're building a team if you haven't somebody that's fully invested to keep that going, particularly if you're bootstrapping.
That's where a good leader comes in.
Yeah.
If you got a good leader, then people will follow him,
Yeah.
not necessarily the idea, and that can be.
It's powerful.
Yeah, it is.
That's a very good point, Jim.
Yeah.
She, final words?
I'm good.
Lucar?
Good experience. Yep.
Carl?
Thank you.
Sanjay?
I think this is, for just an overall observation, San Francisco and Silicon Valley chapters coming together to make this happen under your leadership.
Yes.
Thank you very much. This is the first time. SLP didn't ask for this specific prototype. He set it up.
Yeah.
It was his idea. He said, I want to do this. I said, let's go forward.
He's hyper.
Look at where we have landed. This is phenomenal.
Tommy.
Good job, Tommy. Thank you. Seriously.
Thank you, guys. You were amazing. I think I learned so much from you guys as well from these 2 days, and seeing your energy levels. It's I have no words to actually articulate it. So great job. I hope you learned a lot. I'm very happy that you actually managed to stick for 2 days. I insisted that you commit, and it worked. And I thank you for that. I sent you out the emails. Please make sure that you fill out the feedback. It's a Google form, so it should be very easy to fill out. And I appreciate you for everyone coming. Thank you.
So can I maybe from the logistics sort of, I think, so all of the deliverables that have been produced, I have not seen all of them on the Slack, and also the link to the Proto.io. If everybody can post it, it would be really great. And also the pictures that people have taken from the phones, so just push them to Slack. And also the participant list, I think you may have it. Can you publish to everybody?
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
And
if everybody is okay with it.
yeah. And then the last thing is notes. I think everybody has their notepads, but I don't know if there is a way to collaborate and then get like all of the key points that everybody would have noted into like a common place. I mean that will be beneficial to, I think, collectively to everybody.
Tommy, is there any way to have? See, there is a coalition built in. We having worked for 2 days. So is there any way to create a group where, as we are doing the startups on our own, there's some question or something to share? That will be helpful.
Like the SLP one.
Yeah, create this for the batch and you can share.
Yeah, we can use a Slack, right?
I believe Slack is already set. So.
Could you guys just help me on your way out with arranging the place and cleaning it up a bit? Thank you guys. Amazing.